everyone. Welcome back to Level Up, the Career Playbook, where we unpack how top performers actually grow, lead, and win at work. I'm Brian Bell, longtime HR business partner and founder of MambaHR. Now, I started this podcast. I think by now we know I got laid off, but after years in the trenches, I realized it's not just about working hard. It's about knowing what great actually looks like when the pressure is on. And today's guest, she's a master at that. Lisa Thompson is the founder of Iona HR, a UK-based HR strategy firm and former head of people who's made a career out of stepping in when things seem to have gone off the rails. Whether it's scaling fast, transforming leadership teams, navigating cultural shifts, or rebuilding trust after disruption, Lisa knows what it takes to guide organizations through change that sticks. She doesn't just manage chaos, she helps companies move through it stronger, smarter, and with people still on board. So in today's episode, we're going to dig into how to lead when everything feels messy or unclear, why change management is the underappreciated superpower in business, how to make HR a commercial, trusted partner, not just a back office function, and why Lisa walked away from corporate life, the cushy corporate life, to build Iona HR. I want to learn about what she's learned about driving impact on her own terms. So if you've ever found yourself in a company saying, we're growing too fast, or this change isn't landing, or why does this feel so hard? This episode is your playbook. Now let's get into it. Lisa, we made it. A little bit of a snuff at the beginning. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great. It's burning hot where you are. It's about to be burning hot over here. So I'm heading into where you're going. Hopefully it starts cooling down fast, but I'm doing great. Appreciate you. I want to give a quick intro to everybody and how I found Lisa. This is Lisa and I's first time seeing each other and talking live. I put a prompt into ChatGPT about a month ago saying, find me the top 10 best voices in HR that can give me actionable insights, talk about the future of HR, and really get to learn from, because I want to focus on the HR side for a bit. And Lisa was the second person on the list, thanks to ChatGPT. So now we are here talking. The second funny piece of information is Lisa is amazingly gracious to begin with. I sent the invite and it was 4 or 5 hours long. And Lisa was like, I don't know if I could actually do a podcast that long. What do you think? And I'm like, oh, that was my mistake. It's only 1 hour. But she was going to try to, I guess, tough it out. But anyway, from the very beginning, thank you, Lisa, for joining. I gave you a quick intro of how the show goes and why we're doing what we're doing. And so I'm really excited to spend the next hour trying to pick your brain and learning more. Okay?
Absolutely, no problem. And thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here.
Amazing. All right. So in the intro, I said this is a podcast founded by MambaHR. And so MambaHR, I don't know what the company is, but ultimately I'm trying to build a tool that makes an HR business partner in your pocket. I don't know. Really, at the point of this is I really want to have a podcast to learn how to be better in my role and help other people be better. The Mamba and MambaHR is named after Kobe Bryant, and he had the Mamba mentality, which was a relentless pursuit of perfection, dedication to your craft, sticking the little details, and that's what you have to fall in love with. And so I fell in love with that mantra, and so that's what the company's named after. Because of that, we have sports-related themes throughout this podcast. So you'll get the sports-related theme. It's all tying together. So the first segment is the pregame. So of course, we want to talk about your early influences, your career foundations, and I obviously want to get to know you, but in getting to know you, helping others figure out how they can do the same thing. So obviously, we start from the beginning. Who are you in your own words?
So I guess in my own words, I am a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter in personal life. In the professional world, I'm known for being really honest and straight talking, possibly sometimes to the point of being blunt. However, I try to temper that with kindness in everything that I do, and I believe that's at the heart of me, and that's never really caused me any problems. In fact, if anything, it's made me stand out a little.
I understand the being direct. You have to be, especially in the world that you're in and we're in, but not even at work. I think it actually benefits people. It might turn some people away at first, but ultimately we all drive to it. So I love that. I'm curious, how many kids? You said you're a mother?
Yeah, I've got 2 boys. They're 26 and 28 now, so they're grown up and living their own lives. And yes, it's nice to get a bit of time back now.
Good for you. I am on the other side of that. I have a 13-month-old, almost 9, and almost 10-year-old. So on the other side of this. But yeah, maybe I'll have another podcast to pick your brains about parenting.
Well, they're precious years though, just because they go so quickly. So, don't waste them.
I agree. I'm seeing that. All right, let's talk about HR and people team action first. How did you get into HR? Everybody I've talked to has had their own weird story, and it's never been this perfect story. How and why did you get into HR?
So when I went to university, I went to school, went to university, and back then, HR wasn't really a defined career path in the UK. Like, I didn't even know that HR was a thing, I don't think, when I was 18 and I was going to uni. So off I went to uni. I did my degree, which was like pretty non-specific. It was in the classics, and graduated and thought, I'm qualified for nothing unless I want to teach. And I didn't really want to be a teacher. And as a result of that, I actually went back to like a local college and started to do some business skills. We have a qualification called an NVQ here in the UK. And it's like a really hands-on practical type of qualification where you can learn how to do really practical things that you need in the workplace. So I started to learn how to type, and emails were just actually becoming a thing then. And it was like, what is this? And why would that work? Why would anyone ever need to use an email? Right back then. So I did that for about 9 months and got some skills and things. And then I started just doing some office work. And I ended up working in an HR department it was actually a waste management company, which isn't the most glamorous, but it was an HR department which was just a wonderful place. And I immediately felt at home. And the more I learned about what they did, the more I thought, I'm really interested in this. It was about, people and about how we manage people and why people behave differently in different situations. And it really, really intrigued me. And there was a couple of HR advisors, as they were back then, who I will credit hugely with kind of inspiring me to want to pursue this. So there was a lady called Marjorie Haynes and a lady called Caroline Daly who were so encouraging, and they were so patient with me, and they saw that I really loved it and I wanted to get involved in more. And I can still remember the first recruitment interview that I was allowed to sit in on. And it was for a kind of mechanic type of role in a garage. And one of the questions back then was, what's the firing order of a 6-cylinder diesel engine? And I can still tell you that it's 153624 because I memorized that. Like, before I went in, I was so excited that I was going to actually be part of an interviewing panel. And so, yeah, they encouraged me to do my CIPD, which is the UK version of SHARM, I think you have in the US, yeah.
Yep.
So, professional qualification. So I spent a couple of years getting that whilst I was working full time, and I had a 9-month-old at the time. That was fun. And so that was it. So I kind of fell into it, which there's a lot of people my age say the same, that because it just wasn't a career option back then. But that's how I found HR, and that was like, oh goodness, 27, 28 years ago.
A couple other guests had a similar story to that. And I have the same one where I kind of wish I knew in college what HR entailed, and I probably would have gone into it, but I did everything else and then realized that this is the right place for me. And I'm curious, now that we have some experience and some years on us, would you recommend this career to people, younger people or people earlier in their career now? Would you recommend HR? And if so, because I imagine yes, I hope you're an advocate for it. What would you recommend they should do in order to maybe get a little bit better head start?
So I'm a huge believer that actually the earlier years of me doing some admin stuff and working in different organizations and getting to see different cultures and experiencing different cultures in different businesses has played a huge part in my success within HR, and is responsible for me moving quite quickly through the ranks when it's what I decided to do. I once heard a grad who had gone to uni, done HR, qualified, come out and say, well, HR is easy, isn't it? There's a textbook and there's legislation. And I was horrified because for me, it's about the application of that knowledge It's not about knowing what's the 5 fair reasons for dismissal in the UK. It's about understanding how you would use them and which one, when it's appropriate, and what sits all around that.
Right.
And it's about people and understanding people. So I guess my advice would be to don't try to rush things. I'm not saying don't do a degree in HR and go straight into an HR role, but don't expect to walk straight into an HR manager role or a BP. Start in a role where you're learning the basics, identify the people whose practice that you really admire, and role model their behaviours, watch what they do, learn what they do, and learn from the bottom up. Because there really is no substitute for not being able to look at some absence data, for example. Being in an HR manager role and not being able to look at absence data and spot a pattern. And you spot that pattern from being the person that actually had to pull that absence data together and looked at it originally when you were younger, a younger version of yourself, and what that actually means and what that might mean for that individual, and looking to do some checking up on, what's lying behind that. Do we know anything about this person? And, obviously everything's online now, but back in the day, going to the filing cabinet and pulling out their personal file and looking back through pages and pages of documents to see what's been going on in their life. What do we know about this person? And I think you can only be that rounded person if you have experienced the harder work at the lower levels, the monotonous work as it can be sometimes. It's all a means to an end. So don't discredit it and enjoy it.
Around that working in the trenches, I remember doing that, coming in and doing the onboarding, doing the paperwork, and every week it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's lacking motivation sometimes. It's the same thing. You feel like a paper pusher, and it's tough to see the bigger picture. How would you recommend folks that are early in their career approach it where they can understand that it will matter? Because it's really tough. Do the same boring button push every single time. And now 15, 20, 25 years later, we can look back and be like, I understand how this fits into the big picture and why that single button push or why that paper actually matters to the bigger picture. Obviously, you don't have that bigger picture yet. How do you keep somebody motivated or engaged to understand like what you're doing in the trenches actually matters?
I think for me, what was really important was to find a mentor in the business, somebody a few stages ahead of you, and be someone where you can really have an honest conversation with them and say, I have got ambition. I understand where I need to be right now, and I understand the value of that. But can we talk about a plan? Can we have some form of goals that, in the next quarter, then, I can come into, I don't know, a disciplinary hearing and take notes. I can be useful, but I can actually see what's going on. But will you also explain to me beforehand what we're doing and why? And afterwards, can you explain, can I be part of, or can I be present when those decisions are being made, so that I understand why a decision's made or a sanction's given and why it might not be, and I understand about mitigation and all of those important things. I think it's really about, you have to manage your own development ultimately. It would be lovely, and I know there are organisations out there who really do this well, but there aren't lots of them. So in the main, people will be responsible for their own development. So you grab it by the horns and you demonstrate that you've got hunger, that you're keen, that you're going to continue to operate at a high level in the job that you're being paid to do, whilst also wanting this extra experience and knowledge. And I don't know many HR people who wouldn't support someone like that. I know for me personally, it's a huge thing being able to give back to our profession and being able to help and mentor the generations coming through. And learn from them as well, because it's a different generation and they have different ideas, and actually the workplace has changed a lot. But I do think you have to, if this is what you really want, be prepared to put yourself out there, but don't expect things to be handed to you on a platter, because you will have to work. But it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, for people listening or watching, I think the key takeaway there is go and find a mentor. Many of my guests, to your point, I think you mentioned there was two people that really were instrumental in your early career. They took you under their wing, but you probably showed some promise and showed some hustle and some grit for them to say, you know what, let me show you the way. But to your point, you have to ask, hey, I want to learn. I want to be in the room. Tell me why. Tell me why, and be the incessant. This might sound weird, but almost like a child that asks a lot of questions. And I've had a lot of people reach out asking if I would mentor, and I'm like, absolutely. I'm honored if you actually go out and ask the question. So, HR or not, if you are in the early stages of your career or the middle part of your career, or even if you're senior, go and find somebody that knows more than you in the world that you're trying to be in and ask them to take you under your wing. It's helped for me tremendously. I have a couple of really great people that have really helped me. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, to try to get a bunch of mini mentors to do the exact same thing. So to your point, ask, go find one. Don't wait around.
Absolutely. Yeah, perfect.
Now, something that I think people have probably noticed, you do have an accent and you're clearly from the UK. You are my first international guest. So that is a big deal first. And so I think that's really cool. But calling that out, and I'll talk about some differences in a little bit, but because most of the companies I work for now are global, I think it's normal to have an office in the UK, to have an office now in Dublin. We're global. I'm curious from your end, because you've done senior roles in the UK. What are some differences you've seen in HR in the US and UK HR? Are there any key differences that you've seen?
So this is really quite anecdotal for me because I haven't actually worked in a role which has had any presence in the US or
Okay.
actually internationally. But from my understanding, there's two areas I would that immediately spring to mind. And one is in the UK, we have some really strong employment rights, and it's quite difficult, and it's becoming more difficult with new legislation that's coming in to actually terminate a contract. So there's a lot of lot of loopholes that and obstacles that have to be jumped over or ticked off before employment or a contract can be terminated. And I get the sense in the US that's not so much the case. You mentioned layoffs and how often that's happened. I've never been laid off in my life. We don't do that.
Uh,
Um, so I think that's quite a key one. So we have really strong notice periods and legal frameworks and processes around that. And it's actually at the minute we have it's a 2-year period where once somebody's been in employment for 2 years, then they can claim for unfair dismissal at a tribunal if they believe they've been unfairly dismissed. And that's actually about to be reduced under the current government. They've passed an employment rights bill, which has got a lot of legislation under it. And I think the most far-reaching aspect of that will be they're reducing that to a day one right.
well,
So there was a case, I think it was back in, I want to say about like 2008 or 9, they put it down to a year, and it caused havoc in the employment tribunal courts. Like they were overloaded because people all of a sudden had this right to claim unfair dismissal when they hadn't had it, and it got changed back. And now it's not just being reduced; it's going right down to zero.
the
There is
day
going to
one.
be
That's
day
amazing.
one. Now they have talked about a probationary period, a statutory probationary period. So at the moment in the UK, we only have a recommended probationary period, and it's contractual. But they're talking about introducing a statutory probationary period, which we think is going to look like 9 months, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. And during that time, there will be a modified termination procedure. So it will be a lighter touch than
Okay.
we currently have. And that will be the only real opportunity for an employer to dismiss without risk going forward. So that's gonna bring about a big change. So yeah, that I think that's a key change. And the other area I think with the US, which is a bit different, is that we have a lot of presence at the top table. I mean, probably not enough, but we do. We have usually a white male, at the top table in most organisations, somebody who operates at a senior leader and may have interface with the board, who represents HR. I'm not sure I've heard much of that from the US, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
Not really, no. I'm curious around the protections, like the employer protections. It sounds weird and it feels weird, but to ask this question, but who's lobbying for the employee protections? Because to continuously make things stronger, that just does not feel quite the same as in the US. And I'm not saying that we're just rogue here, but it's a lot different. Is there a lobbying group, or what is prompting these changes, and who is prompting the changes?
So politics in the UK is very different from the US in that we have, at the minute, we have a Labour government, and the Labour government is possibly akin to your Democrat Party. And the Labour government have its roots in trade unions and public sector HR. So the Labour government, oh my goodness, I think I've wiped it from my brain when they actually got in, because it wasn't good news. But they've been in power now for coming up to a year, let's say, and they've made so many big changes. So we had a situation where our doctors and nurses, so bear in mind we have the NHS, so our National Health Service. So our healthcare is all free. It's paid for by the government. We pay tax. The government then fund the National Health Service. So GP appointments, scans, surgery, dentists. Actually, no, dentists are different. Forget I said that. But the rest of it, that's all paid for. So doctors and nurses in the UK, other than in private hospitals, are in the main public sector employees. So we have local authorities, which are our councils and the NHS. And those two groups of people traditionally have complained that they are underpaid, and complained about their pensions. I wish I had a pension that was as generous as what the local government provides, which is around 21, 22%. That's what the employer paid. Yeah. So the Labour government have made all of these changes to protect public sector and NHS. What they're not bothered about are small business or smaller business. And so they've done things like they've increased our national insurance contributions, which is how we pay for the NHS. Okay. Which has really hit small business because the employer and the employee both contribute. So there's been these changes and these decisions that have been made to support public sector and NHS are really at the expense of all of the other businesses in the UK. And the UK is made up primarily of small businesses.
If a new political party wins in 2-3 years or when the next election is it reasonable to say that the changes that you're trying to help companies implement now, will those be ripped out? And I'm just curious from an HR perspective of, are HR practitioners in the UK really helping to manage through a lot of the legal aspects versus, I think a lot of times what I'm doing here is people strategy. I'm not saying that people in UK don't do that, but are you, a lot of what you're doing managing through political change?
So at the minute, yes. So the changes that are coming in, there are lots of them. Some of them are in place now. So there's a duty to protect against sexual harassment from the employer's perspective, and there's a duty to train new staff, all staff, on that, and that's been in since October last year. And so they're drip feeding through all of the changes. The next big ones are coming in 2020. The day one rights are coming in 2027. So it's taking quite some time, and it's myself and other HR companies and consultants that I know, we are spending a lot of time trying to prepare our clients for these changes. So I have a client who has a chain of pubs and bars, and they operate on 0-hour contracts. Do you guys have 0-hour contracts?
I don't even know.
Okay, so a 0-hour contract it's an employment contract, but you haven't got any guaranteed hours of work. So there's you can offer the person the bar work. So this is what it is, a shift on a bar. Uh-huh. they can turn that down. So there's no
Oh,
mutuality of obligation. But they are an employee. So you're paying their holiday pay, you're paying tax and NI on their
sounds
earnings.
amazing.
Well, so it can be abused. So this is the issue. So some people love it. It works for them. They might be studying, they might have other commitments at home, and they just want to pick up a shift every now and again when it suits them. And that's great for those people. Other people need a more regular wage, and they might struggle to get a mortgage or any finance or anything because they can't guarantee an income. So Labour, in its wisdom, are going to be scrapping 0-hour contracts. Now, my client, whose majority of his workforce, he has 85 staff, I think 75 of those staff are on 0-hour contracts.
Oh, yeah.
So that type of work is quite prevalent right now. We do still do a lot of the culture and the good stuff, the added value, the really positive stuff, the stuff I love. But there is a lot of compliance, as I would call it, HR
Yeah.
as well.
There's two questions I have. The first one is, you mentioned it's a lot harder. It sure sounds like it's a lot harder to let somebody go or terminate somebody in the UK. And so that being said, I imagine that companies do something a little bit different to make sure people are on track sooner. Here, of course, I think, we do
Yeah.
PIPs, right? We have coaching plans, we do PIPs, and then if it doesn't work in a couple weeks, see you later. Since there's a lot more hoops to jump through, are there structures that you feel like companies that are successful set up to keep people from having to go through the big process of tribunals and all that?
Yeah, so in the UK there are 5 fair reasons for dismissal. There's conduct, so it's all of your disciplinary stuff. Capability, which is a performance of capability. Redundancy, which is your layoffs. Some other substantial reason, which is a bit of a catch-all and isn't used very much at all, which is like maybe, for example, you drive a truck. Your job is to drive a truck for a living. You lose your license. So a legal process or system has resulted in you being unable to do your job. That would come under a legal enactment. Some other substantial reason. Sorry, that comes under a legal enactment. And some other substantial reason is maybe when there's a breach of the trust and confidence at the heart of the employment relationship that's been broken. So any dismissal has to fall under one of those 5 areas. So we have in place performance management frameworks, or capability policies, as they're often called. And again, we have to follow. So have you heard of ACAS? So ACAS is a UK organisation which is there for employees. It's like fairness. They promote a good code of practice document on discipline and grievance and things like that. And they have something called a 3-step process, which is the right to a fair investigation, the right to a hearing before dismissal, and the right to appeal. So they're the very basics. In addition to that, you can't dismiss somebody for something on a first offence unless it's categorised as gross misconduct, which
Oh,
is like theft or, somebody punching somebody in the workplace, some violence, something like that. So in the main, there's a ladder effect, and that applies to performance as well. So you identify there's a problem, you've talked to the person about it, you might say you're on a warning, you've got a sanction for that, you've gone through the process, you've got a first written warning. So there's first written, there's a final written, and then there's dismissal. And you really should ladder your way through it. You can jump. If the misdemeanor or the performance is bad enough, you can jump, but it's tough. So a probationary period is a time when you can actually act quicker than that. You're not bound by that
okay.
process. So it is a little bit easier at the beginning. But yeah, we have structure and policy upon structure and policy, and knowing how to do it and how to flex, and when people have the right to be accompanied and when they don't, and all of that forms a lot of our work.
I've worked with a lot of folks in EMEA, the region, right?
Yeah.
And fortunately, I'm like, okay, there's something happening over in the UK. HR business partner, HR person that's in charge of this huge region. Good luck. And now you're making my light bulb go off saying they are doing so much. And the second question I had around that is, where specifically are you going to understand all these different laws that are coming up, that are changing? Are you literally just online looking at legal briefings, or is there a website? What are you doing to know specifically how you should be prepping what's coming down the pipe? Because how do you keep up with it?
So personally, I use the CIPD a lot. So I'm a member, actually a chartered fellow of the CIPD, which is the highest ranking. And I use the CIPD to give me all of the legislative changes and all of that. But in addition to that, we, as you say, there's legal companies who they contact you all the time. They send you an email with all of the updates and things like that. So I will use employment law briefings. There's quite a few of those around at the minute, believe it or not, because of everything that's happening. So,
Yeah.
you could spend all week going around different solicitors and attending employment law briefings and having a nice donut and a coffee. There's a lot of that about. So yeah, there's a lot of places, but then also obviously there's the government website as well. So we have a government website which lists all of this. ACAS will jump on board with that as well. So we've got quite a few sources of information.
As weird as it's going to sound, I'm actually going to look into that because I'm just curious and just helping kind of sharpen my pencil. I imagine I could probably use the same way that I found you use AI to summarize, like, what's going on in the UK. So I'm actually looking at that because that's interesting because there's so much difference there that it's worth knowing. Okay, I could talk weirdly about compliance a lot, but I'm going to move to the next segment. Let's talk about the power up segment called career moves. Let's talk about skill building. The first question: what do you think is an underrated skill or mindset that's helped you navigate growth, chaos, movement? What do you think?
It's not HR related at all, but it's humor. That I can't lose my sense of humor. And in the midst of the chaos and things going wrong and employees doing things that you really didn't anticipate, I've got to just laugh at it. And I still do it now out of corporate, but I've got a client and who is recently, well, they are one of the most challenging employees I think I've ever come across. I think he probably takes the title of the most challenging employee that I have
Are you
ever.
able to give any details? Because I'm very curious of what the most difficult is, because this is impressive.
I will tell you offline because there are a few legal processes
Okay,
involved at the minute with this person.
fair.
So I can't possibly contribute to that. Yeah, I think in the midst of all of that and supporting the managers around that who are trying to deal with it, and they're tearing their hair out in frustration because they're genuinely trying to do the right thing and it's not landing in the right way, and we've tried so many different ways and it's not landing, and I don't think anything will land in the right way. But having to stand back and say to them, do you know, I didn't see that coming and I've got a level of respect for that move. It's like a game of chess. And yeah, I think being able to laugh about it and appropriately laugh about it
Fair.
is really, for me, that's what gets me through the dark days. And we have them. We all have the dark days.
We definitely do. Yeah, I'm going to be curious to hear offline about this one because if it's the most difficult, that is impressive by itself. It's a gold
Oh yeah,
star.
yeah,
Outside of humor, can you
yeah.
think of a time that, especially in HR, everything's always moving fast? What has helped you stay effective when everything is just moving at lightning speed?
I'm a fan of a good to-do list. I have to say, I like to see things visually. At the minute, I'm a fan of Trello. I like Trello, but I also I use Microsoft To Do as well. I'm swaying between the two of them. Can't quite decide. And for me, it's identifying those big projects, chunking them down, working out what's the priority. There's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much you can do. So if you can't delegate or if you can't switch it up, I'm a big fan of AI too, and I'm starting to use it more and more in my practice. But I think for me, it's having a control of knowing what's needed. For me, things have gone very wrong, or it's been a really bad day if I don't feel that I know what I was supposed to have done. So therefore I'm worried in case I haven't done it, that I need to know what it is. And also having the courtesy for other people to say, I'm really sorry. I know I said I was going to get this to you by 5 p.m. today. It's not going to happen. I can get it to you by 11 tomorrow morning. Would that work for you? Is that okay? There's a lot of other moving parts at the moment, and doing that in advance, like having that level of courtesy.
Yeah. Walk me through I'm a to-do list. I have a notepad and I have calendar time boxing. I
Yeah.
use AI. I have calendar reminders. I take notes and send myself stuff on Slack. So I'm all over the place. Walk me through your note taking process. Do you have a physical piece of paper? Is it a checkbox? You mentioned Trello. How are you setting up? And I'm really more curious onto, are you at night writing your to-do list for the next morning? How are you managing your priority list in the
So
current?
for note taking, I've actually switched to an AI note taker. So at the minute, I'm using Otter AI, but
Me
I've
too.
also heard. Oh, okay. So, do you know you can export that transcript into chat, by the way, and do loads of stuff with it?
I've been doing that for a while. It's amazing. Yes.
Yeah, it's a game changer, isn't it? So yeah, I'm trying to convince other kind of clients to, I would say more like public sector clients, to allow us to use Otter in interviews, disciplinary or grievance investigation interviews, because it's just so much more accurate and it's so much quicker. So I'm getting somewhere with that as well. So that's really good news. That's a big step forward for us. So yeah. So I have a notebook. I've got a notebook next to me right now. And I use that if I'm in a meeting and there's a particular point that I know that I immediately want to remember. I don't take notes of everything, but I'll make a note of actions or things that really stand out to me. So then what I do at the end of every day is I've got time blocked out at the end of each day, and I go through my notebook and I transfer those into a task, whether that's on Trello or To Do. With Trello, I've got lists set up for projects. So for me, I've got obviously various clients. So I've got a list set up for each client, and I've got a card set up for each particular project or piece of work that I'm doing. And I will use the sub lists within that, and I'll date them. I'll make sure that they're all got dates on so that you know what's due on any one day. I do the same thing in To Do, Microsoft To Do. I'm kind of moving towards that. I think I'm getting a bit distracted by the pretty patterns on Trello and all the pictures that I can put on things and the nice colours that I can use. And so I do the same on To Do. I've got groups and subgroups set up with, again, like, so obviously for me as well, it's not just HR work. So I do marketing. I have to look at accounts. I've got all of my back office function that comes along with running a business that most people don't think about before they do this. And so I've got regular tasks. I'm a great fan of a repeating task, anything that can take the work off it. So I do that every evening, bring everything up to date, look at tomorrow, look at where I've got time blocked out. I time block like you do. And then so I have a time block for client work. I have a time block for working on the business. I have a spare hour each day that I leave blank for meetings. So if somebody wants to book a meeting with me via my online calendar, they can do that. And then on a Friday, I have a 2 hour block where I really delve down into what's coming up next week, have I got any diary clashes, things like that. So yeah, that's my process. I am a little bit I do need that for me, otherwise I feel a little bit out of control.
And I mean, I especially understand for you having your own business, but one of the things I think I'm going to take away from it was you mentioned I have my notebook and then I have to remember what I wrote in it. But what you do is at the end of the day, go through your notes for the day, transfer them into a place with dates. For me, I'm like, oh, I know it's in my notebook. And I end up finding it eventually, but then maybe something falls off. But you're being deliberate in making sure
Yeah,
that every single night you're doing that download. And I'm trying to also figure out through Otter or through other ways, can I make it completely digital so I don't have to do that transferring? But right now, I like the idea of still writing. It does help me keep things in my
yeah,
memory when I write it down. And
yeah.
so adding that last piece of transferring and being deliberate and putting time to do that, I think that's the key part. I love that. I love
Yeah,
that. I'm
you're
going to do that.
closing the loop there. And I'm the same. There's something about a pad of paper and a pen that feels it works for me on certain levels that online or digital just hasn't done yet. And I've done the same. I've tried to come away from it completely and be responsible with paper. It's just not the same yet.
Yeah. I'm debating if like the people use kind of like an iPad and they write on it and then it automatically transfers it, but it still doesn't feel like paper. And maybe I'll have to get over that one day and I'm just dragging my feet into the future. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I think iPads are a little bit different because you can get, obviously, if you've got your iPad, you could have Office on there, MS Office, and you could move things into folders. But I tried a Remarkable. Have you come across the
I've
Remarkable
heard
tab?
of it, but yeah, how is that?
I've tried two and I've sent them both back. Like the so the first one was back when they first came out, and they were just like they're like a paper, a Kindle Paperwhite.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, they're that sort of texture and look. And it was just very grey. It was, and I'm quite an expressive. I'm going to write things down. I'll have different colours and things like that. And it just didn't work for me.
Uh,
And then they brought a colour version out, and I'm a sucker for anything new. And I'm like, oh, I'll have one of those. So I still couldn't get away with it because your files sit separately in a different app.
Oh,
So I'm like, oh, how do I marry those things up? And it's something else to check. So yeah, because they're not cheap either. So they were, I think the color version was like, it was about £500, which is about, I don't know what, $700 for
maybe
you guys.
600 these days. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
closer. Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm like, no, it's not worth it. So yeah, luckily if you try them directly from Remarkable, you get I think it's 90 days free to try it.
Okay. I might
So yeah,
try that. I have it's called there's a lot of them now, the AI wearables. I use a Plod, Plaud note pen.
yeah,
So it's you can wear it like a watch, you tap it and it starts recording and then
yeah,
it's just like Otter, but kind of more Otter on demand. And that worked well when I was sitting in conference rooms and doing meetings, right? The same thing as Otter, because it was weird when Otter will show up in a meeting and take notes, and people are like, who is this random thing? So I use the AI notes in Zoom, which is now people are used to it. So it's
yeah,
automatic where people are like, you have to acknowledge that they're going to
yeah,
be transcribed, which is great. If you're not in a Zoom or a virtual setting like this, that's why I started using the plot note pen. But the other problem is, hey, I'm going to record you. Do you give me permission? And like in the natural, making sure you're not being illegal, especially in California and other places. So anyway, that's interesting. But at the end of the day, the trusty notepad and pen still works. So maybe
it
we'll stick
does.
to it.
It does. It has its
Last
place.
question around the skill building, because we're already at 45 minutes and I feel like I could talk to you for another 5 hours. Like I originally scheduled, you often emphasize being commercial in HR. What does that mean? Why is it important? What does that look like in practice?
So for me, I think when I first started working in HR was like a separate function to the business. The business operated over here somewhere, and then HR was sat somewhere else and saying no, mainly, to most people. And what I've really seen, and my practice in particular, has always been to really get under the skin of the business. Like, I remember my first HR advisor's role when I moved on from the company where I, fell in love with HR, but there just wasn't anywhere for me to go there. It was they were at capacity and I was never going to get to that next step. So I moved away and I went briefly into manufacturing. That is my one and only stint in manufacturing. I will never ever work in manufacturing again. It is not for me. However, I would be out there in the factory on the line, like watching what they did, understanding what they did, understanding the different job roles, really getting to grips with what their goals, their targets, their objectives were financially, what is it we need to do, and working with the different teams and understanding the interaction in between them. That was probably me being commercial ahead of my time,
Okay.
because then I think the skill is to align the HR strategy plan, people plan, with the business plan and the goals and objectives, and get the two married together, because we are a support function in some respects, but we're also a strategic partner. And I think that's really, really important to remember, that, we're there to advise and support on, the compliance type of things, but we're also there to help the business achieve its aim. So for me, it's about learning the language that the business speaks. Don't differentiate yourself in HR as being somebody different or not part of that, or that doesn't apply to me. It absolutely does, because the success of the business is this, relies upon the success of the people who are in that business. And in HR, that's what we do. So we all have to be on the same page and striving towards the same goal. And it's pointless having a really great people strategy if it doesn't get the business to where it needs to be or meet the objectives of the business. So yeah, it's about pulling those things together for me.
A follow-up to what you said about matching, you're walking on the floor and their goals, you having to marry what HR is doing. What does that actually look like in practice? Is that so? Walk me through a scenario where you've learned about the people that you're supporting, their goals. Then what do you go and actually, how do you translate that into something that matters on the HR end? I'm curious how you would approach it.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you about when I worked in the railway industry in the UK. I worked for a railway provider, a contractor, who was actually a really, really great company. And I was the first person from the office to get their safety certificate, which was like a 2-day course to allow you to go trackside on working on a live railway. They scare the life out of you on this course. Like, I learned about the number of volts that would pass through my body and how long my body would be, how many days my body would be burning for after I'd died during that. And it's never left me. So I went trackside with the engineers, and we had engineers. So in the UK, I'm from the northeast in the UK, and most of our railway infrastructure, a concentration of it is in and around London. And for us, that's like 3 hours on the train. So a lot of the engineers that worked for us were lived in the northeast. Their families were in the northeast, but they worked Monday to Friday in London, and they were away from their families. And the company, as I said, it was a great company. It had recognised that things like hotels, long term weren't great for anyone's health, really, and connection with each other. So they'd rented these amazing houses in Tufnell Park, which is a really gorgeous part of London, kind of like basement and 4 stories type of thing. Huge. Yeah. And the guys would live there Monday to Friday. So, they had some home comforts and things like that. So I went trackside with them. I got my PTS and went trackside. And they were first of all, they were really appreciative of that, because they felt that nobody really understood what they did, the conditions that they were facing. We're talking about, they're working on live railway line, and the trains go past at a speed that if you're standing within 6 foot of the track, you would be sucked under. And the way that the safeguard in the industry is that you had someone called a lookout. This was this basic. And this lookout would be scientifically placed at a point by which they could see oncoming trains, and they would signal to the rest of the team. There would be someone in charge of the site safety around that team working, who would at the beginning say, this is the place of safety. Whenever the lookout indicates, you move immediately. You take your tools, you move immediately to your place of safety, which is probably only about 10 foot away. So, there wasn't a big room for an error in this. Anyway, and that's the conditions under which these guys worked. And as a result, it was really high pressure. And they would come, finish work, they'd go home, have a shower, and then inevitably they'd go to the pub, because the pressure was so high. They needed this release, and they were like eating pub food, which is, never the healthiest, and they were drinking. And so I spent this time with them, and I'm not surprised they go off to the pub. What can we do differently? So I spent some time talking to them, and what came out is that actually they were really fed up of going to the pub, but they felt like they needed an energy release. They needed a release of something. That, pressurized working day, they needed to do something. And what we talked about was potentially paying for their gym memberships as part, or allowing them to claim it as part of their expenses. They thought that would work for them. So I got the approval that I needed to. And we changed the expenses policy and helped them find the right gym for them as well, because that's a very personal thing as well. And that was as a result of kind of going and just having that conversation. So it doesn't need to be anything groundbreaking, but it made such a huge difference to those guys. And they were healthier, they were fitter, they felt better. Quite often they were probably hungover in the morning because of they'd been in the pub the night before. Like that all disappeared. I'm not saying they never went to the pub, but they certainly weren't doing it like 5 nights a week like they had been. Yeah, it was we were taking staff engagement at the time, and that area definitely saw an increase. I can't remember what it was now. It was a long time ago, but we definitely saw an increase.
The main takeaway there is actually talk to your people. They'll
Yeah,
be able to give you a pretty good guide on how to tie what they're doing and how you can tie that into business and marry the success. It's not some sitting up on high and doing this genius work. It's just being in the business, knowing your people, and just talking, having the conversations.
it really is. I think in HR sometimes we think we have to have all of the answers, and we don't. We really don't. We just need to go and talk to people and find out and listen as well.
Yeah.
Listen to what they're saying.
And that it's very real about we feel like we always have to have the answer versus, well, let's help get you to the answer. Let's help figure out what the best answers are, but we don't have to always have say something in the moment versus listening, take it back, go, let's help you find the right place, the right people, the right process. But that's really real of we feel like we have to know everything, which is just it's actually silly and it's a weird pressure that I think a lot of us in
Yeah,
HR have. Um,
yeah.
Switching gears, and then we're going to wrap this thing up here. But I wanted to talk about Iona HR. So you were in the corporate world. You've taken the plunge. You're running your own thing now, which I've always, since I kid, wanted to have my own business, but I've never done it, and it's scary. So I'm curious because I know a lot of people, especially in HR, they go do consulting. I'm in other places. What advice do you have for others thinking about going independent or building something on their own? And I want to preface the company I work for, I'm not trying to leave, so don't get any weird ideas. I'm asking this question for everybody else, but what have you learned now that you've been on your own? What is something that others should think about? What are some skills? What are some things they should consider?
Key thing is if you know you want to do it, there's an amount of planning and preparation you have to do, and you have to really think about what it is that you love doing. What parts of HR do you love? Is there a market for that? How could you package that up? How could you create an offer? Are there people who will buy that? And then you've just got to do it. Like there is no substitute for just getting out there and trying it. Nothing is forever. You can change it at any point. If you decide that you want to have a business which is, I don't know, coaching line managers on how to manage absence in their team. I know that's very, very niche, but say that's that you know what you want to do. And you got out there and you were doing it, and you'll inevitably pick up other pieces of work as well, by the way. But you might then say, actually, that's not making my heart sing, or there's not really the market I thought there was, or I've come across this. That's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot that and take the material and switch it into something else. The key thing is to get started. And also be really clear with yourself on your boundaries. When you work for yourself, you will work harder than you have ever worked before. And I know I have this yet. And you will sacrifice some family time and some leisure time, but put some boundaries into place and stick to them yourself. Because if you don't stick to them, no one else will respect them. You have to respect them too. So don't let it become a habit of working late evenings, if you've been working all day as well. I mean, obviously, if you've had the day off because you want to go out and do something else and you want to work on an evening, you can absolutely do that. That's your call. But, don't try and burn both ends of that candle. It will catch up with you. And I would say just ask for help as well. There are so many people out there who will, if you connect on LinkedIn and things like that, people will help you. If you drop them a message and just say, hey, I'm starting out. I'd really appreciate if you could spare me 30 minutes, just talk about the things that you wish you'd known. So many people will help you. They're so willing to help. And I've done that with so many people who've set a business after I have. And it's a real pleasure to do that and to be part of somebody's journey and to make a bit of a difference. So again, don't think you have to have all the answers as well, because none of us do. What you said about me at the beginning was super kind and I loved hearing it. But I don't think I've got all of the answers. I'm still on a journey. We're all still on a journey. And, being vulnerable and asking other people for help and support is probably one of the most valuable things you can do.
Okay. So it's expect to work harder than you ever have.
Yeah.
Put some boundaries around yourself. And one of the things you said that was very key was just go and do it. Just take the
Yeah.
step, take the leap, ask the questions. Okay. Well, nothing but success there. We're at the 2-minute drill, and I want to give some time for people to be able to find you. But the last segment before we close this out, because we're already at an hour, which is insane, the 2-minute drill. So it's just a quick question, quick answer part of our segment here. What is one HR buzzword that you would love to retire, get rid of?
Grievance.
Okay.
Let's
Like that.
replace it with mediation.
Okay. What's one thing HR folks should do this week to build more trust within their business that they're working in?
Coach managers to give them confidence. Give your managers confidence to go out there and to adopt a new strategy or try a new technique with a member of staff when other things have failed. Give them a safe place to do it in. Be there to support them. Let them try that thing out. Give them the help and support to do that and be there afterwards to, if it doesn't go as well as anticipated, but give them confidence.
I love that. I've never heard that. Coach to confidence versus just telling them how to do the thing. So I love that.
Yeah.
One underrated superpower in strategic HR that more people should lean into.
Curiosity, without a doubt. Ask the questions. There's so much we don't know. If somebody comes to us and they say, we need this thing, this is project, this has happened. And we're so programmed to just kind of go, okay, and start writing things down and working out what we should do to fix it. We've only got a third of the story.
Right.
Ask the questions. Be curious.
I love that. Best career advice you've ever received?
That nothing or very few things in this life need an immediate response. So take a breath, relax, think about it, speak to somebody else if you need to, but a knee-jerk reaction rarely is the right response.
Agreed. Agreed. Last selfish question for me. If you could build or magically create one HR tool or platform, what would it be and why?
Something that pulled data from all over the business, including engagement surveys and the financials and the objectives and the goals and everything, and created a superb people strategy.
I use ChatGPT and our company has Gemini, and I pulled all these different reports and engagement surveys just yesterday trying to do this myself. And so I'm working on trying to figure out how to do that the right way, but I love that one.
Yeah.
All right. Like I said, we're already an hour. The last thing I would do is I would love for you to give a shameless plug about Iona, how we can get in touch with you, how can people find you, anything else that you'd want to know or discuss.
So you can get me at iona.co.uk. That's my website. You can book a call on there if you just want to have a chat about anything I've talked about today. If you're in HR and you do want a mentor or you just want a bit of advice and talk about your own circumstances, I'm very happy to do that too. You can find me on LinkedIn, Lisa Thompson. There are a few of us out there in HR, unfortunately. But so if you try for Lisa Thompson, Iona HR, then you should find me there. I'm on there every day, and I'd love to connect and get to know you guys.
What would companies reach out for you to? What are some things that Iona does? I had a couple of lists of things, and I'm just curious.
So we help businesses on an ongoing basis. That's what I love to do, because then I can help prevent the tough things happening or the crises. We can help prevent that. So we work with them on an ongoing basis to give them support, advice, get them in a really good place with their people. We also do projects around culture, around audits. We can implement HR software to, I'm going to use the compliance word again, but it is a thing. It's having all of your data in one place. And in the UK, we've got GDPR, which is like data protection thing. So it's GDPR compliant, and it allows you to run reports and approve holidays and all of that sort of stuff. And it's really important that small businesses get on that as quickly as possible. So yeah, we're HR generalists. We can turn our hands to most things, and we just love to get under the skin of a business and help them make it better.
Amazing. I will make sure to put your contact info in the description in the bio so people can get in touch with you. Okay. Lisa, this has been amazing. Like I said, I originally put 4 hours on accident for us to talk. I think we could have actually talked for that long. There are so many nuggets of wisdom and jewels that I am really excited to go back and practice on my own. I thank you so much for allowing a stranger to take about an hour of your time to pick your brain. This has been super helpful. So thank you so much, Lisa. Once again, my name is Brian Bell. This has been the Level Up Podcast. I will put Lisa's information into the bio, into the description. Thank you so much from wherever you are watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to everybody later. Thank you.